Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Inept General bringing you a Let's Talk, and today's topic of conversation is the DLC update for Bretonnia. Now, it looks like in the upcoming DLC, where we will get a new legendary lord for the Lizardmen and for the Skaven, we're also going to get an update for an Old World faction, and surprisingly, it looks like that Old World faction is going to be Bretonnia. Everyone thought this was maybe going to be the Empire update, but it seems like it's going to be Bretonnia based on this release of information they put out in one of their development blogs. So they say, as we said in the last What the Teams Are Working On blog, the fancy new content team is powering away at a Lord DLC pack. We have a very good idea about what that's about, which we can confirm will be the next content released for the Total War series. Then we have, you may have noticed that we have sometimes included Old World updates along our DLC releases, and this DLC is no exception, as we're working on a bespoke new feature for one of the Total War Warhammer 1 races that'll have you bending the knee. And as you can see in the image above, we have an image of a grail or a cup with a fleur-de-lis on it, very representative of Bretonnia. Now, it might be a bit strange that we're getting a Bretonnia update, because we kind of got Bretonnia tweaks with the Tomb King update. If you guys remember back then, it seems a very, very long time ago now, but they sort of tweaked the system. So when we look at some of the issues and the things we might come to expect from a Bretonnia update in the upcoming DLC pack, what might we see? Now, we've had two races officially updated in this way before. The first was the Dwarves, and the second was the Vampire Counts. In the case of the Dwarves, what they did was they moved the Slayer King to Carrick-Cadrin, and they gave us a new unit in the form of Dwarf Slayers, which were basically just the Slayer model with a double-handed axe in their hand, as opposed to two single-handed axes. And for the Vampire Counts, we got a bit of a mechanics overhaul and a moving of Heinrich Kemmler over to the parts of Bretonnia in the Grey Mountains, where he should be, really. So basically what we've seen is a minor change to a faction and maybe a moved lord. Seems to be what they do mostly with these updates, as well as obviously tweaking stats for certain units and what have you. So what might we come to expect with this Bretonnia update? First, we should probably look at what are the problems with Bretonnia currently. Now, the campaign for Bretonnia plays fairly well, and the only big problem I can see is that it can be a little bit short. You do get chivalry quite quickly, so they might look to expand something in that region, but going on what we've seen so far from these updates, the one thing we can definitely expect, as opposed to a mechanic dealing with the chivalry and switching that up to maybe make the campaign a little bit longer, is the idea of moving the starting positions for a starting lord, or just trying to create more variety in the new territories we have in Total War Warhammer 2. For Bretonnia, let's have a look at the map of the starting positions for the faction. As you can see, they're all in Bretonnia. You have Alberic, you have King Luon, and you have the Fey Enchantress. Now, if we were to move one of them, you could move one of them away, but where would we move them to? And I think for that, we have to look at another big piece of Bretonnian history, and that is the Crusades they had in Araby. At the moment, when we focus down on the region in Araby, we see that there are a good number of Bretonnian factions here, but I'm still, fingers crossed, holding out hope for an Araby faction at some point to take over some of these territories. But there are two spots I think you could argue you could have as a new starting position for a Bretonnian legendary lord, and that is the island of, I think it's Pyrrhus, this one up here, just off the coast of Araby, and I wouldn't say Al-Haik because I want that one to stay as an open option for maybe an eventual introduction of Araby as a race pack later on down the line. But here, or I think the other option would be over towards the western coast, and I think this one's Kofur, I think if I remember the city correctly. So I think either of these two options could make a good new starting position for the Bretonnians. They give you a very new enemy to start fighting straight off the bat. You don't have to crusade all the way down south to eventually start fighting the Tomb Kings, and even some dwarves up there, and some other factions as well. There's some wood elves down there as well. So it's a very interesting aspect, and I think would be a fun Bretonnia campaign to actually start in the deserts of Araby. So who are they likely to move? Now, the one that makes the most sense on paper is, of course, Ulbrich. He comes from a seafaring dukedom. It makes sense that he'd be moving around the Warhammer world by boat. He's also slightly zealotous. I get why Ulbrich might be the one who's moved, but you know what? lore-wise, there's not a lot about the man, so you could absolutely easily move him. But in terms of a perfect fit for the Bretonnian faction, you're looking more towards characters they haven't introduced, and that is Baron Odo and Suliman. These are two characters I've gone over in my Missing Legendary Lords from Bretonnia video, popping up in the top right hand corner now, or you'll find a link in the description below. But these two are intrinsically tied with the Crusades. Now, we have not, as of yet, had a Legendary Lord in any of these faction updates. So I think this is wishing for a bit too much compared to what we've had previously. So it's unlikely we're going to get these new Legendary Lords, although it would be fun to have them and bring a bit of dynamism. We could also see if they're looking to get a woman in there, a resurrection of Réponse de Lyonnaise. You could do some lore thing around her turning up. But why is she being Araby? Maybe some mystical magics in Araby resurrected her. You could really go off the deep end with some of this stuff. But Baron Odo and Suliman would be the best fit for a Bretonnian Legendary Lord down there. One of them, if not both, as a pair. So that's really what we're looking at. Now, in terms of the roster, they could change some stats, but in terms of the tabletop, they actually did all the units. They actually added a few more. They made up some units in the Bretonnian faction. So there's not a lot missing from the roster that we're really waiting for in terms of units for Bretonnia. They might make something up, maybe something along the lines of dismounted knights. They might give you the option to dismount your mounts in Total War Warhammer. That would be a very interesting mechanic because that's something we have seen in other Total War games, the ability to dismount. And that would be a fundamental change to the way Bretonnia plays if you get your Grail Knights off their horses to be able to get on the walls in defense and things like that. So that'd be a very interesting change, but again, I think we're shooting for the stars a bit on that one. There's not a lot of changes short of tweaking some stats that I see them making for the roster. So it's really a bit nebulous in terms of what they'll do with that. Now, let's go right off the deep end and say, like, what else could it possibly be as an alternative to what we've discussed so far? And really, the only other massive alternative that'd be a bit of a surprise would be the fleshing out and playability of a Mousillon faction. So that's actually allowing you to play as the Red Duke from the start screen. Maybe throw in some of those ghostly Knights of the Realm we've seen Silostra Diaphyn have. You could flesh it out minimally and still make it a new and interesting experience as far as playing the undead in Bretonnia. So that could be a fun one. It sticks in with the fleur-de-lis, but a bit out of left field. It's not quite on the nose with the bending the knee and Creative Assembly just straight up showing us a grail. So it could be something that weird to throw us off the scent a little bit. But let me know what you guys think we might be able to see in the update for Bretonnia, what you'd like to see, short of the chivalry and the moving of the start position. So yeah, let me know down below. And as always, guys, a huge thank you for watching, and I hope to catch you all on the next one. Alright guys, bye.